Okay, Jack Martin from the People's Tool. Welcome to Build Hatch.
Hey, mate. Thanks for having me.
That's okay. Now, I was really looking forward to this episode because you have a really unique story. So before we go back to the beginning, tell us all about the People's Tool.
All right. So at the minute, we're sort of like your premier sort of hand tool nail bag distributor retailer in Australia. So our most popular things would be the hammers and nail bags, and we get them sent straight over from the States.
That's probably what you're best known for, isn't it? So you've basically got tool bags, builder's squares, and really cool hammers as well.
Pretty much, yeah. That's about the peak of it at the minute.
Now, you've got a really loyal following. So obviously there's some really good quality tools there. Now, like all our guests on Build Hatch, we always like to take it back to the beginning and find out how you started the People's Tool and how you got into it. So did you always grow up in this part of the world?
Yeah, so as the crow flies, about 500 metres away was the house I grew up in. And then, so when my missus fell pregnant, we sort of decided we didn't want to live at home anymore. So I got my shit together and bought this joint. And then so that was sort of around the same time that the tool company started up, because like you have all these ideas and they're like, yeah, one day, someday I'll get to it sort of thing. But then once a kid's on its way, it's sort of there's a ticking clock of 9 months and
puts a little bit of pressure to the
yeah,
mix.
that's when it's happening. And I saw like in the back of my mind, it wasn't going to be impossible to do it after I had kids, but it's going to be a lot harder.
So were you working as a carpenter?
Yeah. Well, now I'm probably 3-4 days a week on the tools, and then the other 3 days, whatever's left in the office. But at that time, I was 7 days a week framing houses.
Growing up through school, did you always know that you were going to sort of enter the building industry?
Yeah, it was always going to be a hands-on thing I did. The tertiary education, like as far as uni, was never going to be my style. Because I didn't even finish year 10 context. So I started working when I was like 16. I got a job on commercial sites and packed my bags and off I went.
And what was it like being an apprentice?
The commercial site was good fun. So there was a lot more time for jokes and banter and that kind of shit. So it was good fun. And then I sort of reached a point with that. It's not where you learn to be a carpenter. So the coin's great, but sort of after 6 months of working there and never having touched timber, it's like, well, I kind of want to be a carpenter. So I left that and went and did a domestic apprenticeship with a couple of blokes in Churnside Park.
And so what, typical residential homes and extensions and things like that?
Pretty much, yeah. We did like all sorts. And then, so I started my apprenticeship when I was 16 and I qualified a couple of days before I turned 19. So I packed a lot in and I sort of, I jumped around between crews a lot, which at the time was kind of, it made me look like I couldn't hold a job. Turns out I've got a set of problems in regards to working for people. But now I'm sort of thankful for it in that like I learn a heap of different ways of doing things from all different kinds of people, and then like different tasks working with concrete, whereas a lot of apprenticeships you never work with concrete and steel and
So what was that like, the working for other people? Like it tends to be a bit of a, I guess you could call it like an entrepreneurial streak or an entrepreneurial quality that where
I think it was just a shithead.
I'm trying to glorify it too much.
Like at the time, so from a young age, I was always into fight sports. Like I always did boxing and that type of shit. And then so like as soon as someone arced up, and I probably should have just copped it on the chin, like I had no problem standing there. That creates problems. So I think that's more where that came from, more than like,
It's part of growing up as well.
Yeah, like I'd love to tell you some great entrepreneurial story about how I had these ambitions about starting a business, but it wasn't. I just had a big mouth.
So what about the People's Tool? When did you start to think about that?
So the time between, it happened fast. So the time between sort of having the idea and getting the first lot of stock in was only about 8 weeks.
But were you like working on the tools or fighting someone when you thought, I'd like to do this, or there's a gap in the marketplace for this?
I was wearing a nail bag at the time and I developed a disdain for it. And it was sort of, at that time, it was the best brand you could get in Australia. It was me and a guy in Sydney were looking at Diamondbacks. We'll buy ours together, we'll get them sent over, half price shipping. We'll buy 10, we'll sell them to our mates, ours will be free. So off I went.
That's simple.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
but what did you hate about the previous brands?
So it was mostly a comfort thing, but like sort of seeing on Instagram that like these tool belts were so great, not being able to get them here is sort of like, once you're not happy with something and you hear something's better, like you want to try it. It came more from wanting the nail bag than wanting business.
You and I were talking well before this, and we were talking about that first initial investment and where that came from. So tell us that cool story about where you got the funds.
So that one was, I had $600 from my 21st birthday, sort of family and all that had just given me money. And so from there, it was around the time, it would have been 2018, later end of it, and cryptocurrencies were jumping around a lot. And the previous year I'd done all right on it.
So you'd invested that
I gambled
$600
and then
put it into cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so I bought a cryptocurrency called XRP with it, and I ended up turning $600 into a few thousand and being smart enough to take it out, having lost a lot of money previously. So I got the initial capital, say, out of the cryptocurrencies and that bought us a little bit, and it was enough to get over here and sort of build enough trust through social media that people were willing to buy. And then so from there, it was just like, I used to send out like discount codes for pre-orders and that kind of thing, and then just sort of rack up as big an order as we could in a short amount of time, and then just get the money up front. So yeah, send that off to the States, as well as like obviously rolling our capital over to keep it going.
So you run the...
Side note, we don't do that anymore. We buy all the stock up front, then sell it.
Of course.
But yeah, it was good because it got us going. Like I can imagine going to a bank and saying, I want to sell these hammers for $500 a piece. You get laughed out of the building. So it was probably the only way to do it.
So can you remember your first real organic purchase where someone bought it that wasn't related to? Because that would have been pretty special.
I don't like telling people about stuff that I'm working through before it's even done like a sale. And then so I was standing in my parents' kitchen, and on top of the nail bags, I'd also set up a supplier of just these Collins clamps. I think it was Long Beach building, spent $27.50 or something like that, and bought like a pack of miter clamps.
And you would have been stoked. Like it was only $27, but it was...
It was like proof of concept more than anything.
That's right.
So yeah, and then from there, like it was one of those things, you might go another couple of days without a sale, and then you might get $29. And then yeah, the nail bags were good. And then so for the first few hundred orders, like every customer I'd talk to directly, like they'd be DMing me and that type of stuff. And that was good because it was going, but it's hard because it's a lot of messages. It's 5-6 months in, we started to reach a point where people would just order. And then that's kind of when it started to go better as well, because it freed me up a lot in that I didn't have to spend 3 hours a night on Instagram talking to people.
So is that predominantly how your sales work? They send a message?
Not so much now in the beginning, but in the beginning, like kind of just an Instagram page with a few hundred followers. Like you want to message and see if there's someone there.
Yeah, I love it. That's the groundwork that you do when you're starting out with anything. You just
exactly.
go that you do the little things that count.
I imagine it's different now because in a crew of 4 blokes, one person might take the plunge and buy something, and as long as our service is good, then the other 3 guys will probably feel comfortable purchasing off us, and they won't feel the need to message us and that kind of stuff. So building up those original customers was really important, and then making sure the customer service was there as well, just to get their mates.
And so tell me about the products. Like we've got the hammer and the builder square, and these are made in the USA.
Yeah. Like, so the handle of that hammer's titanium, and different to the other titanium hammers on the market, this head's detachable. So with a hammer, it's completely possible to wear through a head or snap a claw or something. Like, it happens a bit. But the titanium's the expensive part. So when the head of the hammer and the handle is all tied together and you break something, it's real expensive because you got to replace the titanium. Whereas with this, you spend $100 and you get a new head. Your actual $300 handle's fine. So that's where that came from. You should get that guy on your podcast. He had Stiletto tools, and then he sold it to Milwaukee. So Stiletto was the first titanium hammer. So he invented that, and then he sold it to Milwaukee, and then he started a new hammer company.
Yeah, well, shout out to him because we have a huge following in the States. I mean, I love the Yanks and the Canadians as well, because don't ask me why, but they are the guys that reach out. Like they're not afraid to write you a simple
I feel like
message.
Aussies have that like self-consciousness of putting themselves out there.
Yeah, maybe that's it, because like the majority of people that write messages or comments, just random ones, right? Like just a general comment or just saying hello, or I really like that episode. Maybe that's their attitude of...
We get both sides of that, because we'll get the ones where they'll be like, that's cool. And then they'll get like we'll get the ones where they completely ignore that I'm in another country and you post something like building related and they're like, you meant to screw your floors, not nail it. And you're like, well, wait 1 second, mate. So we get both sides of that coin.
So all your products, are they manufactured in the States?
Where they're manufactured is kind of important to us. So they're all either, we've got a couple in the EU and the UK now that they've left.
Do you just reach out to them and say, hey, this is who I am. I'm interested in stocking your product?
At the beginning, it was like even more ghetto because we didn't even have a website. So I had a supplier before I had a website. The fact it even got off the ground is kind of a miracle, I suppose, because it was literally an email I found on the internet. And then I sent it to Connor at Diamondback and he replied straight away and he was like, yeah, I'm looking for someone in Australia. Like I kind of wasn't expecting it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was meant to be. It was just being in that right moment.
And then, so yeah, Collins Clamps as well. They came on board like at the same time. Who else did we have? I think Martinez came next. He was a tough nut to crack. I thought I was really smart. So at that time, he was selling to like small like hardware stores in the States and that kind of thing. And so I got through to him a couple of times and it was no. It was going nowhere. It's got to be a way. So I called up, it was Sacramento Fasteners in California there. I called them up. I was like, will you sell me these hammers? And they're like, yeah, we'll sell them to you. And I was like, how much are you going to charge me? And they go, oh, we'll probably do it for like cost plus $5. Sweet. And then so I called Mark back. I kind of found a way to do it. Like, are you going to hate me for it? And he's like, nah, you're right. Just go ahead, do it. And that was probably September. The downfall with that, he was distributing through another company. And at the end of that year, that company sold, like the original owner sold. And then so Mark pulled out of that. And so I had no other way of getting hammers. I had to go back to him. But yeah, it's sort of from there, it took just like constant calls and text pestering pretty much.
That's it though, isn't it? Like that's what it's about though. It's the grind, like the thing,
just
just managing the time zones.
If I wanted to make it work, I had to be up at like 9 o'clock California time, which is about 2 or 3 in the morning here, depending on daylight savings. But
now, what about the People's Tool Co? So what about the name? I always like to find out the name. Was that the first name? Did you have other names?
Yeah, like I had to put, I was building the website and I just had to put something in there. I'm sure you can change it later. Turns out, no, you cannot. So yeah, there's no great story there. And then, cause like in the beginning, like I was never going to pay someone to get a logo or anything like that. We didn't have t-shirts or any fancy shit. It was just like that money was stock and that was it. So it wasn't until like probably a year, 18 months, like being into the company that like we actually got a proper logo. It was good.
Yeah. So now you're into shirts as well. I see you're wearing a People's Tool Co shirt.
Thank you.
How did that come about? That's just another sort of angle and
so
sort of tap into?
We didn't do shirts until start of coronavirus when like construction half got shut down unless you were essential. And then so we come up with the idea of the essential crew. I hate just selling shit for the sake of selling shit, you know what I mean? Especially branding, because I feel like your customer's really doing you a favor by wearing your brand around. And then so I wanted to make sure like if they were going to wear it and pay for it, that it was something sort of good. And then so all of our shirts are limited edition as well. So we'll only do like a run of them and then we'll change it to something else. So
yeah, so it's almost like the way that the fashion brands do. They'll, you know, run a certain exclusive limited supply.
Yeah.
And then that's as part of your DNA and your values where we're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep it not for the masses, but
well, like it gets to a point where it's just selling for selling's sake. We've only got a small following and sort of I didn't want to abuse that. I mean, so I was, yeah.
So you would feel like you were selling out to your loyal followers.
Yeah, well, if all you're doing is just pumping your own merch, like, it just didn't make me feel that good. So I just wanted to make sure like each time we did something, it was cool and like people were excited to get their t-shirt. So, yeah.
I noticed coming in here, up on the wall, we've got this poster and it says, can you imagine yourself in 10 years if instead of avoiding the things you know you should do, you actually do them every single day? That's powerful. So tell me about that.
So I'd love to say that was my own quote. That was a Jordan Peterson quote, but it really, I feel like most responsible people it'll like strike a chord with because it's like, it's true. There's so many things like you can sort of imagine yourself in 10 years time and like, you know, you want to get there and you could ask most people, like, what would you have to do to get there? And they could tell you like a perfect plan and then they just won't do it. Like, well,
And it never works like that anyway. Like
No, it doesn't work like that anyway. But sort of if you start to think about it like that, and even if you know it's a short-term pain for long-term gain sort of thing, is kind of what that ties into.
And that's where that saying, you know, swings and roundabouts comes from, where
Yeah.
as long as you have a vision for something that you're aspiring to do, you might not get there in a straight line, but, you know, there could be a few ups and downs, a few mountains. And
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big believer in having fun in the moment too. Like I notice on days where like I'm in a shit mood, our sales will be down. And then days where like I'm having a really good day, whether it's like in the tool company or whatever, our sales will be up. Just, I don't know why, it's how it is. Whether that's a reflection of the size of our business that I'm so ingrained in it.
I have a feeling that you enjoy working on the tools just as much as the people's tool. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you probably don't want to be forced to pick one just yet. Like you're happy doing both.
Well, so at the minute, like I don't have to do either, but I can do both. If like it's really liberating. And especially I think I'm quite grateful for it since my age as well. Like not many people at sort of 23 can wake up in the morning and decide if they want to sit in their office or go out on site with the boys. But I think like the on-site part, like you get that camaraderie of like working long days with the same people like over and over again. And like once you've got a good group together, like it's fun. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's like playing sport, isn't it? You know, that camaraderie.
And it's sort of like we're always pushing each other. Like we track the numbers in like our framing a lot. And then so we can tell when we've had a shit day. I could tell you by how many nails we've shot. Being able to tell and track, and like it's sort of a challenge to beat yesterday's sort of thing. And yeah, it's good.
Just on that, I love that. And that just shows, and it doesn't matter how high up the tree or how low down the tree you are, you can still compete and record and look at the same amount of data as any other person involved in a business.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where you sit in that pecking order.
That's just discipline though. Like that's the boys being disciplined enough to tell me that, like, because there's days when I'm not there. Like they could tell me anything. But that's them being disciplined enough that they want it to be honest. So that when we do start getting like records and shit, like our own records, like it feels better because they know they didn't like lie to me on a day when I wasn't there.
So how do you do that? So you've obviously got a framing business.
Yep.
There'll be people listening to this who are builders, and they'll have guys that don't even do that. So how do you do it?
So if you can stay with us for the first 4 weeks or so, maybe 6, you'll probably be with us for a while. But before that, we'll spit you out.
There's a transition period.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, if you can get through that, you'll probably stay with us for a while. If you want to go off and like build your own crew, we're probably the people to work with because I'll show them everything, like how much we make on jobs and that kind of stuff. Like I'm pretty transparent with that. And I didn't have that opportunity when I was an apprentice. And it's the same problem most apprentices have, to be fair. Like they just go off into the world and they have no idea what to charge for anything because why would they? They've never had to do it before.
They haven't had that exposure.
And even their hourly rate, like most of them don't know what they're worth. Your average freshly qualified carpenter with a few tools will start out at like 35 an hour, but just because they don't know what they're actually worth and what the jobs are being priced at.
But how do you actually do that? Like in terms of, do you explain to your guys, look, this is how many linear meters I expect per hour?
So we have stages of the job we want to get to each day. So in the morning, like it's not an official meeting or anything. We'll just wander around, like generally get there a few minutes early and we're like, this is what we want to try and get done today. And we'll sort of designate tasks a little bit.
So your guys, they get to work before 7, a couple of minutes earlier?
Just. Like we're not like it's not like if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late sort of thing. It's just a few minutes early. Because we do the same thing day in, day out. Like everyone knows their job. Me, obviously, paying the bills. Like I don't have jobs that I won't do. Like I'll pick up a coil gun and shoot bracing like every one of the other boys. In the same way, they'll pick up a nail gun and start shooting studs. But everyone knows the next step. So if I'm busy on something, they'll just keep going on to something else. But that's the benefit of such a repetitive task.
As I said before, I know this because I work with builders and I'm telling you now that they don't all know this. So let's expand on that a little bit further. So if your guys are putting up frames, what sort of things do you look at up front for that job so you can track it? Because before you track something, you have to figure it out and
what it
forecast
is you want to track
and commit to it. So how do you do that? Give us a classic example.
We know how many wall units of prefab walls we should get done in a day. So if we show up and it's a multi-unit site and there's 3 lots of walls there, just like regardless of how big they are, we know that's our job for the day.
So it doesn't need to be hours, or it could be half days, or boys, this is what we're going to do for today.
Like I'll work them out off hours, but I'll work each job out off days, if that makes sense. Because it's kind of the easiest way is to take, if it's a $7,000 job, and you've got $1,000 a day designated to each job, and then you take out each of the boys' costs, and then that's how well you did for that day. I think that answers it.
Yeah, it does. Have you got someone that you look up to or someone who inspires you?
Yeah, definitely. And it's on different levels too. So you've got like the people like immediately next to you. Like, so say, I think I get a lot of my work ethic from my old man. And so that's like by definition someone who you look up to. But then there's more people above that, like even people I've never met, like you get your Mark Cubans. And so like that's someone I look up to. And then I've got a few older guys that help me out when I have questions. And then so they're obviously people I look up to as well. So it's sort of, there's different levels of it and there's different ways to look up to someone. Like no one's perfect, but you might pick a character trait they have or something like that. And sort of on that regard, that's what you want to aspire to be, is sort of how I look at that.
And what's your vision for the People's Tool moving forward?
The idea of having a few retail shops, like one in every state's kind of appealing. The reality of having a few retail shops in every state would be a fucking nightmare. So it's sort of one of those things, we're just sort of seeing how the market plays out at the minute. So we've just committed to a decent sized marketing contract to really push our e-commerce presence. Like obviously our tools are a very touch and feel thing, but sort of how I look at it is if I get enough of them out to people, like I won't need to go to a shop because everyone they know will have one. Like if we get to that point, what's the point of a retail store? Because they're going to know what they want already and they're just going to walk in and buy it. And so by that point in time, you're better off having a website. We're sort of in a middle ground at the minute where a retail shop in each state would be good. I would set it up so that to scale the business is really easy. It doesn't create many headaches. Customer service is still high. Let's just keep going with that pretty much. Like keep chugging away at it, see what opportunities come up, see what new products are coming out. Like there's a few Australian companies out there now. Like you get 48 Tools, he's doing good things. Track Armor, he's doing good things. So there's like all these smaller guys with good ideas and good products that are coming up. So I'd love to be able to sort of jump on board at an early stage of them and help them out. So if we get a good sized brand and then we can sort of work, like integrate these companies straight in, like feels good to give back sort of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going on. And I've had so many people comment and write in and say comments around the friendship and the mateship and the community that the construction industry has is unlike not many other industries. That's one thing I
underestimated going into this. Like when you start a business, you know, I personally didn't think of like the people I might meet, but then like you sort of meet people and it opens doors for you. Like I met Robbie from Evo Build and then now I'm sitting here with you. Like it's just how that shit plays out. And I completely underestimated how much I would enjoy that aspect of it. Because I felt like I think I'm, kind of a loner. I am. I prefer to sit by myself than a large group of people. But like I didn't expect to enjoy meeting the people in the industry so much.
It's because those people too are authentic people and genuine.
Yeah.
And the people I've met, some people are doing it not even for the money, because sometimes if it was about the money, you would have
the tool company wouldn't have made it past 12 months.
That's right. It's the people and the personalities and the people like you and I, we're out there, we're having real and honest conversations, and people might sit back and look up Instagram and think, oh yeah, the People's Tool, and you might have ambassadors and influencers, things like that. I'm not sure, but this is for real. This is all legit. This has come about from just word of mouth and having a good product that speaks volumes.
The core of our business is the product. At the end of the day, that's it. The idea with the Instagram was I had it in my head. I wanted to be a page that at Smoko you would actually search for. So that's why I don't do a heap of stories. I like to post shit because I want people to be able to sit there and be like, did you see that thing the other day? And they can go there and actually look at it. And like, that's not a tool sales thing that much, more as just like a general community kind of thing. And that was another part that I hadn't expected so much, was like, I feel like the tool company has quite a strong little community around it, which is kind of cool to like have created that as well as the business.
What you've actually done is you've allowed the opportunity to have your foot soldiers. So your foot soldiers are the tradesmen that are using your products. And because the products are so good, they're just spreading that message for
Yeah.
you and growing your business for you.
Like,
And
there's
that's
a lot of opinions out there.
well,
You just got to get them on your side.
yeah, well, but even removing that opinion by just having a good tool.
Yeah.
When you break it down, these are tools that your staff or your workers, they're using these tools for, like you said, up to 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Now, if you can make a little difference and have a really good product, well, that small difference goes a long way, doesn't it?
Well, and it's like, so for me, it's amplified as well, because obviously, like, the boys that I employ, they use like the stuff that I sell. So if something's not right, I'm going to hear about it, you know, like I got to make sure it's good. So it's like that immediate, like customer feedback. Well, it's closing the feedback loop essentially, like customer feedback from customers in Queensland, and that's just as valuable, but it's not as immediate. You know straight away when you're working with guys that have paid for your product, how good they think it is.
I think this goes back to what you were saying before, where I asked you about which business would you prefer to work in, and I think you're in a really good position where your carpentry business is able to be a bit of a test dummy and so act as a filter, and you're able to use your tools with your own crew, and that way if someone has a problem or says, oh, this, you can kind of say, oh, actually we use it, we know it.
Yeah.
I
think I had one guy, and it was a while ago, but on the hammer, it's got an angle on the face. He emailed me about it, and he was like, my hammer face isn't straight. And like immediately I could pull out my own hammer and I could be like, mate, mine's got the exact same thing. You sort of build that legitimacy, because it's not just a hammer straight off the shelf. It's like, it's more on a personal level at that point in time, because no one has a problem at having a rip at a company. But when it's like, there's that personal connection there that you're both carpenters, is everyone's sort of a little bit nicer to you.
So what's your favorite part of the People's Tool? Like, what do you enjoy the most out of running that business?
I think it's just really satisfying to watch something grow. I mean, because you start at, like, say you start it with $600, you can kind of relax a little bit with the risks you take. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if it all turned to shit tomorrow, I put my $600 back in my pocket and I'm no worse off. I'm a lot better off because of the skills and shit like that I've learned out of it. It frees me up to take more risks than I otherwise probably would. If you start with $100,000 of like someone else's money to get a company going, and you're still in the process of paying that off, like that's that's hanging over your head.
Yeah, it adds another dimension, and it can impact your emotional decision making.
Yeah. So
whereas you're purely organic and natural, you're able to make a decision off the cuff for your values.
Especially early on, like it was an extremely steep learning curve for me. 6 months before I started the tool company, I was that guy walking around site going, I could start a retail brand. What an idiot. But then learning the skills like around that, how to do just the dumbest shit, like how to do inventory management, use spreadsheets properly, all that kind of stuff. Like it took me a while to learn that.
I take my hat off to you for that, because there are lots of people listening to this who are in boring white collar jobs who would kill to be able to get onto site and work in our industry and be on the tools. I know so many people that have even been builders who've decided to go back on the tools and put on the tool belt because they miss it, they love it. Yes, there's to some extent less responsibility and they don't have to have that client interaction. At the end of the day, it's you know, it's an enjoyable industry to work in.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but the people like you and I that are in it.
You meet characters.
You meet characters.
Like when you're on site and the plasterers are there, like it's good fun.
There's a lot of good banter.
Yeah. And so I think I still enjoy that aspect of it a lot.
So coming here, I was talking to Amanda from Sea Salt, who was a former guest on our show. And so when I told her that I was coming here to talk to you, and we have no affiliations and, you know, completely independent here, but basically had a bit of a brainstorm, and I really like your products. I don't use them. It's been a little while since I've been on the tools as a pro like you guys do every day, but I really like what you're doing and I think it's really special. And I actually love how Australian it is, where it's having a go. And you know, as you said, we've had Robbie and Dino from Evo Build on the show, and that was their unofficial motto, which was just make it happen, you know. Yeah. And it's all under the same theme of having a go. So I've had a really good year. I've been traveling around and it's been totally awesome meeting people like you, and we're only a couple of weeks away from Christmas. So what I really want to do is, this is an opportunity to give back. So I want to give away one of your Diamondback artisan tool belts, which is one of your most popular products. They're in high demand. Everyone wants these things and they're very hard to get at this time of year. So I'm going to buy one from you and I'm going to give it away. So all you need to do to enter is jump onto our Instagram page, which is at Build Hatch. You need to follow the first one, which is us, which is Build Hatch. The second one is the People's Tool Co., which is Jack, who we're sitting here talking to now. The third account that you need to be following is Diamondback Toolbelts. And the fourth account that you need to be following is Evo Built. So they're the 4 accounts. And then tag a mate in the comment section. And from there, I'll draw out some sort of list out of a hat or something like that. And we'll announce a giveaway just before Christmas. So these Diamondback Artisan Tool Belts will make that a hell of a Christmas present, or going into 2021, you'll have the #1 tool belt on the market. So does it sound good, Jack?
I really want to buy one myself.
So that's what we'll do. So they're the 4 accounts: Build Hatch, the People's Tool Co., Diamondback Tool Belts, and Evo Built. So they were the boys that know Jackie here and set up this chat. So that'll be good. We'll put a little giveaway. As I said, it's a way of giving back. And I've really enjoyed sitting down and talking to you. So you're our last guest for 2020, which makes it even more special. Yeah, just sitting down, listening to you, staying up 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. These are the things that people don't understand what goes on behind the scenes. And I love it. So kudos to you. And I hope I read on the front page of the Fin Review one weekend that Jack Martin from the People's Tools been approached by Bunnings for $200 million. So
you and me both, mate.
You never know. But anyway, I have a funny feeling that you wouldn't sell it anyway because you love doing it.
Good fun.
It's good fun. You obviously have a hell of a good time doing it, and you've got a very loyal following. And the only way to have a loyal following in business is to have these foot soldiers work for you, look up to you, follow you, believe in you, or do a really good job. And the only way to do a good job in construction is to have the right tools for the job. Yeah, so get on board with the People's Tool, everyone. And Jack, it's been really nice having you, and well done to you. And thanks for coming on to Build Hatch.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries.